Welcome back to another Pokemon SLAB Sunday, where once a month we take a deep dive into a bunch of graded card prices just so we make sure we're staying ahead of the market. And we are going to do a little giveaway today. All you have to do is make sure you're subscribed. You have to hit that notification bell. You have to hit that like, and then you have to answer the question of the day. What do you guys think is the absolute worst legendary we have ever gotten? This is what we're giving away. Super nice Victini promo and a very nice sealed Bulbasaur promo. And I do have to announce the winners from last Sunday's giveaway. So that was our end of the month video. So we had two. So for the subscriber, it is at Samer Salama 6275, and for the member, it is at Kevin Dillon. So just shoot me an email or hit me up on Instagram. I'll get those cards sent out to you. And we do have to give a big thanks to our video sponsor real quick, and that is Collectr. If you guys are interested in keeping track of your entire collection, so you guys know exactly how much your stuff is worth, I definitely recommend downloading Collectr. And I have tried all the other apps; they do not even compare. They have almost 30 different TCGs with about 2 million products tracked. And they've partnered with the biggest people in the hobby, and they do the most giveaways out of anyone. So make sure you follow them on all their socials. And if you join up for their pro membership, you get a ton of more benefits, and they do way crazier giveaways. So definitely check them out. I'll have all the links in the description. Then, of course, if you're going to grade through PSA for your very first time, you can click my link in the description, use the code BEARD25, and you receive $25 off your very first submission, which is basically a free graded card. And I highly recommend grading yourself instead of letting people like GameStop, where they don't really know what they're doing, grade your cards. All right, let's get into it. We're going to go from newest to oldest. We have the new Mega Charizard X. So this thing just keeps going up in price raw. It's kind of crazy, but I said it many, many times in all my videos. I had a feeling this is going to happen, and I have a feeling this is going to be one of the most manipulated cards too, where people will never let this thing really, really get cheap. But last sold in a 10, 1990, 1925, 2032. We got a high sale at 2,500, and then even raw. I mean, 975, 680, 750, 620. But if you think about it, I mean, if you can find a really nice clean copy for $750, get it express graded, and it comes back and you make $1,000, that's not bad. And that's honestly what so many people are doing right now, because it's actually holding its value pretty well for, the PSA 10, even though, so many people said it's just super, super easy to pull. Next, we have the gold Mega Charizard. And this card is also going up raw. I mean, we got a sale of $425, $400, $450, $480, $695. This thing was in the, mid 300s. And even a PSA 10 now, this was on the 29th, $3,300. We got one before that at $3,250, and we even have a $3,400 sale. Wild. Next, we have the gold Mega Lucario. So this thing was like $4,000 when it came out. Now last sold $1,000, $999, $1,050. And raw, we got $299, $294, $260. So slowly coming down in price. Raw. Next, we have the gold Mega Gardevoir. We got a raw sale here at $160, somehow moderately played already, even though the card's a few months old. Must have kids. Then we got a PSA 10 at $780, $750, and then raw $235, $250. It's kind of crazy the price difference between Gardevoir and Lucario, but honestly, Gardevoir gets a lot more love than Lucario does, so it makes sense. Next, we have the Mega Gardevoir SIR. PSA 10 just keeps slowly falling. Last sold $375, $400, $380. Then raw, $190, $155. Another one at $190. We got an $85 one here, which is crazy low. Next, we have the Mega Lucario. I do like this card a lot more than the Gardevoir, but they're both really nice. Last sold raw for this, $160, $177, $150. And then we got a PSA 10 here at $399, $385, and $425. Next, we have the Mega Venusaur. This card gets no love. That sold raw $115, $140, and then PSA 10 at $259. And another one here at $228. Next, we have the red Victini from White Flare. It's a pop of $1,723 in a 10, $1,377 in a 9. Last sold in a 9, $400. Then last sold in a 10, $1,100, $900. And $866. We have another sale here at $887 and another one at $860. Next, we have the white Reshiram from White Flare. Definitely a little bit easier to pull, almost double the pop. This has $3,800 in a 10, $2,100 in a 9. And last sold in a 9, $331, $350. And then we got a PSA 10 at $750, $765. And raw, it's still slowly going down in price. I have a feeling it will be in the mid 200s very soon. Next, we have the white Reshiram SIR. This has pretty much the same pop as the full art. Last sold in a 9, $175, $155, PSA 10 at $338, and $390. Next, we have the red Victini from Black Bolt. This is a pop of 1800 in a 10, 1500 in a 9, last sold in a 9, 370, last sold in a 10, 850. Next, we have the black Zekrom. It's funny, they have the exact same pops as their counterparts. And we got a sale in a 9 at 360 and 355, and then a 10 at 1100, 900, and 995. Next, we have the Zekrom EX SIR. This has a PSA 9 set at 155, and then PSA 10, we got 355 and 370. Next, the Seismitoad, crazy low pop, 724 in a 10, 2400 in a 9. Pretty much every single illustration rare from Black Bolt and White Flare has crazy, crazy low pops. So, I mean, some of those illustration rares are going to do very, very good in a PSA 10. And this actually got down to about 750, and the last few sales, now 899, 840, and then we got a PSA 9 at 180 and 170, and then 160. But I do have a feeling this card will drop a little bit more. Next, we have the Kyurem from Black Bolt, one of the most underrated legendary Pokemon in my opinion, and it has the same pop as all the other SIRs. And last sold in a 10, so cheap, $133. We got another one at 138, 160, 140. I mean, the card raw is $65, $70, so for double the price, you can get it in a PSA 10. And this is the best Kyurem card we've ever gotten in Pokemon history, and it is a legendary Pokemon. I really feel like people are sleeping on that. Honestly, I think this art beats almost everything in Black Bolt and White Flare. Next, we have the Team Rocket's Mewtwo. This was at 1980, got down to about 1,000, and now last sold 1,200 and 1,280, and we got a PSA 9 at 469. This is a pop of 8,300 in a 10, 4,100 in a 9. Next, we have the Cynthia's Garchomp with a pop of 6,000 in a 10 and 2,500 in a 9. This was at about 1,000. Now that sold 489, 529. We got a PSA 9 at $205. Next, we have the Ethan's Ho-Oh. Pretty much same pop as the Garchomp. This was at $800. Now that sold 450, 405, and 415. And we got a 9 at 173. And this card is getting very cheap raw. We got a sale here at $120. Next, we have the Team Rockets Moltres. This is just the one you actually have to pull. This is at about 650 in a 10 for the high. And now last sold 299, 305, PSA 9 at 131. And raw, you can find this card anywhere between $90 to $100 now. Next, we have the Team Rockets Nidoking. Was at 450 in a 10. Now last sold 270, 260, PSA 9 at 125. Next, we have the Lily's Clefairy from Journey Together. It's funny, these special illustration rares are actually much tougher to grade than like Destined Rivals. The Lily's Clefairy only has a pop of 4,000 in a 10 and 6,900 in a 9. This was at 700 in a 10, and now last sold 450. And then we got a PSA 9 at 125, 145. And next we have the Salamence here. This is at 463 in a 10. Now last sold 212. Another one at 210. I'm definitely going to buy this card once it gets into the, mid 100s. And again, kind of tough to grade. 3,200 in a 10, 5,100 in a 9. Next, we have Prismatic Evolutions. We're just going to click on a couple of these. Of course, we're going to check out the Umbreon, the big boy. So a lot of cards are going back up in PSA 10s. This was at 4,100. Looks like the low was like 2,500. And now, last sold 42, 41. I mean, that's just crazy to me. And then a PSA 9 at 1,100 and another one at 1,200. This is a pop of 4,200 in a 10, 7,100 in a 9. If you notice, almost the same exact pops as the cards from Journey Together, which Journey Together has very easy pull rates. But of course, they're not nearly as popular, so not as many people are going to get those cards graded. So we will also check the Sylveon, since that is the second most expensive. So this was at 1,800, got down to 911, now last sold 1,100, 1,075, and we got a PSA 9 here at $330. So not terrible. I want to check the cheapest one here, the Jolteon. So this was at $740. Wow, the disrespect for Jolteon. Now last sold 490, 495, and we got a PSA 9 at 160. And we will also check, might as well check the Eevee, and then we'll check that Umbreon Master Ball. So the Eevee was at 685, got down to 411, now last sold 550. Another one at 550. We got a PSA 9 at $99. And I think people are sleeping on some of these Master Balls, especially like the grading plays. I mean, a lot of the Evolution Master Balls are very, very cheap. Of course, Umbreon's still pretty expensive. Last sold 44, 62, 97, 80. But there's only 874 of these in a 10, 2,400 in a 9. I mean, that's one of the toughest cards to grade in the entire Scarlet and Violet era, besides, you know, some early illustration rares from like Paldean Evolved and stuff like that. But we got a PSA 10 sale at 425, 305. So even, I mean, if you find this card super minty, $40, $50, $60, you get it graded. That's super nice jump. Next, we have the Surging Sparks Pikachu. This has a pop of 7,700 in a 10, 12,000 in a 9, so a little tough to grade. This is at 1,270 in a 10, now last sold 850, 900. It did get down to 800 flat, so bouncing back a little bit. Next, we have the Latias, 5,200 in a 10, 8,300 in a 9. Was up to 750 in a 10, and now last sold 410, and we got a PSA 9 at 145. Next, we have the Milotic. This was at $390 in a 10, and now last sold 280. We got a bunch of PSA 9 sales at like $90, and pretty much the same pop as the Latias. Next, we have the Squirtle from Stellar Crown. Was at $340 in a 10, got down to about $240, and now last sold $290 and $273. PSA 9 at $80. This has a pop of 13,000 in a 10 and about 17,000 in a 9. Next, we have the Bulbasaur from Stellar. Pretty much similar pop. This was at $309 in a 10, and now last sold $225, $204, $210, and PSA 9 like $60. Next, we have the Greninja EX. So this is a pop of 8,800 in a 10 and 8,300 in a 9. This is at $1,100. Got done about $720, and now last sold just up a little bit, $770, $795, and $800. Next, we have the Eevee from Twilight Masquerade. This is at $300 in a 10, got down to $200, and now last sold $210, $210, $250, and this has a pop of 11,000 in a 10 and 12,000 in a 9. Next, we have the Bubble Mew EX on the rise again. So this is at $1,900 in a 10, got down to $1,400 in a 10, and now last sold $1,650, $1,900, $2,071, $1,900. We got a PSA 9 at $550, $600. This has a pop of 15,000 in a 10 and 21,000 in a 9. Next, we have the Charizard from Paldean. This is at $877. Now last sold $650, $635. And this is a pop, pretty much same as the Bubble Mew. Next, we have the Gardevoir from Paldean Fates. This is at $437 in a 10. Got down to about $268 and just coming up a little bit right now, $295. And for pops, they both have about $8,500 for a 10 and a 9. Next, we have the Groudon. This is at $635. Now last sold $400, $395, $385. Next, we have 151. Click on a couple of these. Got to check out the Zard. Bouncing back. This is at $1,400. Got down to $900. Now last sold $1,200, $1,140, $1,190. Then PSA 9 at $250 and $280. This has a pop of 25,000 in a 10, 43,000 in a 9, 15,000 in an 8, which is just crazy. Then we will check the Blastoise. Got to give respect to all three of the starters. Also going back up, this was at $476. Got down to about $330. Now last sold $350, $375, $370. PSA 9 at $75 and $95. And we got to check the Venusaur. Then, of course, the Zapdos. So Venusaur bouncing back a little bit also was at $395, $400, pretty much same as the Blastoise. And now last sold $296, $295, $350, $292, and pretty much the same pop too. Now for the Zapdos, and then we'll probably check the Charmander. Charmander has been doing work lately. So this was at $483 in a 10, and got down to about $270, and now last sold $300, another one at $300. This one has a little bit lower pop than the Blastoise and Venusaur and stuff. This has 12,000 in a 10 and 20,000 in a 9. And got to check that Charmander. So this has been going up raw too. This is at $418 in a 10, got down to $303, and now last sold $350, $345, $347, PSA 9 at $61 and $68. This has a pop of $8,300 in the 10, $17,000 in a 9. The 151 illustration rares are so much tougher to grade than the actual special illustration rares. Alright, next we have the Charizard EX from Obsidian. This was at $750 in a 10. Now last sold $465. This has a pop of 12,000 in a 10 and 25,000 in a 9. Next we have the Magikarp. Very tough to grade. 3,800 in a 10 and 11,000 in a 9, which is basically what the Black Bolt and White Flare illustration rares are going to look like, you know, when they've been out for a few years. So this got up to $2,400 in a 10, dropped down to $1,800, and now last sold back up to $2,400, right on the nuts. And we got a PSA 9 at $400. Next, we have the Tyranitar. Much tougher to grade than like the Groudon, but this was at $787, got down to like $490. Now last sold $750 and $640. There's a pop of $1,650 in a 10 and $4,400 in a 9. Next, the Raichu, same exact pop as the Tyranitar. This is a little bit cheaper, was at $550, dropped down to $360, and now last sold $365, $380. So just coming up in price a tiny bit. Next, we have the Gardevoir EX. And look how much easier it is for a special illustration rare to get a 10 than it is the illustration rares from these same sets. This has a pop of $6,300 in a 10, $7,700 in a 9. Was at about $250, and now last sold $196 and $170. All right, we got a bunch of Scarlet and Violet era promos. We're going to definitely be checking the Pikachu with Gray Felt hat. So this was at $2,400 in a 10, dropped down to $1,300, and now last sold $1,900, $1,900, $1,325, $1,950. This card just constantly goes up and down, and it is the second most graded card now besides the Burger Chew, and this has a pop of 46,000 in a 10, 47,000 in a 9. Wow. That's why I would just never spend that much money on something that's truly not rare at all. Next, we have the Snorlax Pokemon Center promo. So this was at $1,750 in a 10, dropped down to about $900, and now last sold $1,250, $1,200, and one low sale at $900, but that was about a week ago. This is a pop of $1,500 in a 10, $3,200 in a 9. All the Pokemon Center promos are going to have pretty low pops. Next, we definitely got to check the Charmander. So we had high sales at $3,700, and then we had sales at like $2,000, and now last sold $2,500, $2,850. This is a pop of only $660 in a 10, $3,200 in a 9. Wow, that is actually crazy. All right, let's check a couple different ones here. Now we might as well check the Pikachu Paldean Evolved one. So this had a high of like $1,800, dropped down to $800, and now last sold $1,495, and another one at $1,495. This is a pop of $588 in a 10, $1,700 in a 9. I definitely want to check the Pink Mew. There it is. Nice special illustration rare. And this card is not easy to grade. 9,900 in a 10 and 26,000 in a 9 and 9,500 in an 8. Whenever the 8 is the same pop basically as a 10, you know it's tough to grade. So this is at $780. Now last sold $518, $600. We got a PSA 9 at $75 and $66. And we'll check one more promo here. Let's see. Maybe we'll do the Greninja EX from the Shroud of Fable box. This was at $540 in a 10. Dropped down to $275, and now last sold $359 and $335. Super cool cards. Next, we have some Sword and Shield. We got the Lugia V. This is at $1,223 in a 10. Dropped down to $835. Now last sold $1,400. And we got a sale before that at $885, $925, $920. And then this is a pop of $23,000 in a 10, $14,000 in a 9. Next, we have the Giratina V. This is a pop of only $9,000 in a 10 and $8,900 in a 9. This was at $2,400, dropped down to about $1,800. Now last sold $2,000, $2,150, and $2,100. Next, we have the Charizard V. This was at $900 in a 10, dropped down to about $600. Now last sold $660, $715, and this is a pop of $15,000 in a 10 and $11,000 in a 9. Next, we have the Gengar V Max. This was at $2,272 in a 10, dropped down to $1,600. Now last sold $2,000 and $1,900. We got another sale at $2,150, and this has a pop of $13,000 in a 10 and $8,500 in a 9. So a lot of the Sword and Shield alternate arts are actually very, very easy to grade. which is why, you know, some of the Scarlet and Violet era stuff that is actually pretty tough to grade will age very, very well. So the Espeon here has a pop of 11,000 in a 10, 5,800 in a 9. So this had a high of 800 in a 10, dropped down to about 450, 500. Now last sold 590 and 605. Next, we have the Mew VMAX from Fusion. So it's all the way up at $700. And now last sold 390 and 399. So it's a pop of 7,400 in a 10, 3,300 in a 9. Next, we have the Mew. Both a 10 and a 9 have about 5,000 for the pop. This was at about 620 in a 10. Now last sold 350 and 337. Next, we have the Charizard from Celebrations. Just like I expected it, it is going up. This was at 485 in a 10, dropped down to about 360. Now last sold 500, 499, 500, 520, 550. And there's a ton of these. There's 32,000 in a 10 and 17,000 in a 9. Next, we have the Umbreon Gold Star. This was at 465 and got down to 250. In my opinion, this card is 1,000 times more special than the Charizard we just looked at, because Charizard has gotten so many reprints, you know, of that art, and Umbreon Gold Star doesn't. And this is honestly one of the rarest Gold Star cards ever. Obviously, the real one, not the reprint, but yeah, dropped down to about 240 in a 10. On its way up right now. Last sold 320, 380. Another one at 320. So it's a pop of 15,000 in a 10 and 10,000 in a 9. Next, we have the Shining Magikarp. So this was at 250, dropped down to about $96. Now that's sold 123, 130, 135. This is also a reprint of a very expensive card, but pretty easy to grade. 8,900 in a 10, 3,800 in a 9. Next, we have Evolving Skies. We're going to check out a couple of these. Of course, the Umbreon VMAX. Got to check the big boy. So going back up, was at 3,700, dropped down to 2,900, and now last sold 35, 36, and 3,250. This card just will always go up and down forever. Next, we have the Rayquaza VMAX. This is dropping a little bit raw, but going up in a PSA 10 was at 1,850. Dropped down to 1,390, and now last sold 1,726 and 1,734. This is a pop of 13,000 in a 10, 4,200 in a 9. And we definitely got to check a couple more. So for sure checking the Dragonite V. Probably my favorite card in Evolving Skies. This was at $1,256 in a 10, dropped down to about 800. Now last sold 881 and 890. This is a pop of 9,600 in a 10, 6,900 in a 9. We definitely have to check the Umbreon V, because that card has dropped a ton in price raw. I mean, this card was like $400 or $500 raw. Now last sold, it was at $1,153 in a 10. And now it's below like $300. But in a PSA 10, it got up to $1,153, dropped down to $700, and now last sold $1,075, $1,000, bunch at $1,000. So going right back up in price. It says a pop of 7,800 in the 10, 6,900 in a 9. And we will check one more card from Evolving Skies. Let's see here. You know, I really feel like the Glaceon VMAX having a Pikachu in here is just so underrated. Same thing with the Sylveon VMAX. I mean, if you really look at it, there's, you know, an Eevee here, an Eevee here, a Vaporeon here, another Eevee up top. There's so many awesome Pokemon in that card that I really feel like it could almost be as expensive as the Umbreon VMAX. It's got up to about $730 in a 10, and now last sold $615, $580, $688. Says a pop of $12,923 in a 10, $3,600 in a 9. Next, we have the Blaziken VMAX. This was all the way up to $1,200 in a 10. Now last sold $700, $625, $694, $630. And this has a pop of $6,200 in a 10 and $2,100 in a 9. Just imagine if these alternate arts were actually really tough to grade. Man, they'd be worth so much more. Next, we have the Sleepy Tyranitar. This was at $810. Now last sold $602. And we got another one here at $610. Says a pop of $6,300 in the 10, $4,700 in the 9. Next, we have the Charizard VMAX from Shining Fates. This was at $394 in a 10. Now last sold $257, $247, and $237. This has a pop of $33,000 in a 10, $8,000 in a 9. So very, very easy to grade. but I feel like it's a card no one ever talks about. Next, we have the Pikachu Rainbow Rare. This is at 416. In a 10, now that's sold 305, 420, and 332. This is a pop of 11,000 in a 10 and 5,000 in a 9. Next, we have the Charizard VMAX from Champion's Path. This has a pop of about 20,000 in a 10 and about 7,000 in a 9. Was at about 280, and now last sold 305, 280, 350, 320. This is a pop of about 20,000 in a 10 and 7,000 in a 9, and this card just keeps going up and down, like $20 to $30. Last sold 305, 280, 350, 320. Next, probably my favorite early Sword and Shield card before we got alternate arts, and that is the Charizard V. This is a pop of 17,000 in a 10, 7,200 in a 9, and it was all the way up to about 525. Now last sold 355, 363, 385. So that has definitely dropped a decent amount. And then we're going to end on some Sword and Shield promos. So might as well check the special delivery Bidoof. I feel like no one ever really talks about these cards. So this was at 2,000 in a 10. Now last sold 1825. And before that 1450. Before that 1345. So going back up in price. This has a pop of 1,000 in a 10, 2,300 in a 9. But yeah, for me, I'm super cheap. So if I'm buying any graded cards for my collection, they better have low pops. Otherwise, I'm just going to buy them raw. It's the only way I'm buying graded cards. Because then they're actually kind of rare. Otherwise, they're just really not that rare. Next, we have the special delivery Charizard. This got down to $700 in a 10. Now last sold $1,150. And we got another one at $1,175. These cards have been going up raw. This one has a pop of 4,400 in a 10, 17,000 in a 9. And check a few more, of course. We got the Vaporeon VMAX, beautiful card. This was at $1,025 in a 10, and now last sold $710. And we got an eBay sale up here at $730. This has a pop of 4,100 in a 10, 6,900 in a 9. And I definitely want to check that Pikachu promo that no one ever talks about, the one with all the starters. These are just like Festa cards, so I'm obsessed with these. So this is a pop of 2,700 in a 10, 3,700 in a 9. So it's at $495, got down to $350, now last sold $360, $415. And check a couple more. What do we got here? Might as well check the Gold Pikachu V from the Celebrations UPC, another card that I feel like no one ever talks about. But I actually picked it up raw when I was vending, and I put it in the case, and it sold like 5 minutes later. This was at $419, and now last sold $660 and $499 before that. Doesn't even have the pop on here, but I remember they were kind of tough to grade. And we will end on this Charizard V-Star, the one where it has a Mewtwo in there. Love this promo. This was at $1,097, got down to $620. Now last sold $750 and $900 before that. It says a pop of $8,900 in a 10 and $27,000 in a 9. So very, very tough to grade. But you got to think that Charizard UPC was everywhere. That's why there's so many of them graded. But still, very tough. But all right, that was today's Pokemon Slab Sunday. If you guys like this content and want to stay ahead of the market, please make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a like and comment, especially if you want to be entered into that giveaway. And then if you guys do want to learn some stuff, definitely check out my Throwback Thursdays, and you're going to learn so much more than pretty much 90% of the hobby knows. And then, of course, if you guys want to support more, you guys can check out my Instagram, my TikTok, my Facebook. I'm super close to 10,000 followers on TikTok, so if you guys could do me a big favor and go follow me there, I'd really appreciate it. But all right, I want you guys to have a great day, and if you guys want to watch my last following Friday, which was a crazy one, click this video here. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.